The Assessment Participation Index measures how close the school is to participation targets set in Michigan's ESSA Plan. The target is set at 95% participation for all subgroups in all tested subjects. You will see that there are two targets for assessment participation, one for content assessments and one for English learner participation. If schools have less than 30 English learners, the English learner participation will show NA and will not count in the index. Let's click View More for more information. After clicking View More, we'll get to the combined screen. And this screen shows all of the content assessments. So we can see what the participation was for ELA, math, science, and social studies. And those get weighted, averaged across to the all subject participation in the final column, and that column then is used to create the assessment participation index. In this case, the school was 95.63% of the way to meeting the target of 95% participation on all the assessments. So again, that our assessment participation index is not the percent of the assessment participation, it's how close the school was to 95% participation. So this just shows the participation percentage for each of the tested areas. So let's look at the ELA tab for some more information. So on the ELA tab, things work here very similarly to the other parts of the index. We'll look at the all students group. There were 480 students enrolled, 459 of those students tested, which is 95.63%. That 95.63 is above 95%, which is the target. So the all students group was 100% to meeting the target goal. But one thing I wanted to point out about this is the assessment participation index is based off of the number of students enrolled. Well, the growth index or the proficiency index are based off of the number of full academic year students. So if you try to compare and look at the numbers of students that were used in the assessment participation, it will be likely a larger number than what was in the growth or proficiency indexes. And that is because those focus on full academic year, where the assessment index focuses on all enrolled students. So that was one detail that I wanted to point out here. The math, science, and social studies tabs all work the same as the ELA tab. We'll talk about the English learner tab here in just a second. But all of those different items come back to the combined report, and much like the other parts of the index, we look to see if there are 2 or 3 asterisks, because those will not count in the overall index because they had less than 30 students in their count. So in this case, we can see that all students, Asian students, economically disadvantaged, English learners, Hispanic students, students with disabilities, and white students will make up our index. So let's talk about the English Learner tab. When we go to the English Learner tab, we'll see that this looks a little bit different. This is not broken out by subgroup. It's the only group here that we're looking at are English learners as a whole. And we see that there were 236 students enrolled, 229 of them took the assessment, which is 97.03%, and that is above the target of 95%, so they are 100% target met. And we can see that reflected in the English Learner Participation Index. Similar to the proficiency and growth indexes, where those used full academic year, and there was a difference between that and the assessment index. There's often a significant difference between the EL progress and the English learner participation. The progress is just for full academic year, and it also needs 2 years of assessed values so that it can make the AGP for the students. And so you'll often see a pretty significant difference between the students that counted for the English learner progress portion of the index and the number of students that were used to determine the English learner participation. So as we can see here, those values that we discussed earlier come over to the full index and get filtered in this case to all 7 of the items then that will make up the overall index of this school being 58.94% of the way to meeting all of their targets.